Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into this video. So this has to do with the California redistricting that is currently going on. We know we several weeks ago had a big victory when California showed up big time and approved Proposition 50 so that the state could, in fact, redistrict to try and pick up 5 additional seats to offset all the many seats that Trump is trying to get through redistricting around the country. So there is a new legal development. All right, so a gentleman running for the California State Assembly, he filed suit against Gavin Newsom trying to stop the redistricting, okay? Now, yesterday, the U.S. Department of Justice, they intervened in that lawsuit. Now, let me tell you what that means. So they're not the original plaintiff. They are intervening. They're basically saying we have an interest that we want included in this lawsuit. So they filed an intervention. They want to be a part of this. They want to be heard. They want the court to consider their interests in this matter. So it was just yesterday, and you see here I have highlighted United States complaint in intervention. United States of America plaintiff intervenor. And we do it all the time. We do it all the time here with our firm. If somebody else has a legal battle going on and we feel like we need to intervene so that our interests can be protected or to preserve our interests, to assert some claims or something, we do it all the time. So that's what the DOJ did in this instance. Now, obviously, the irony here is, and you're going to see the things that they're complaining about in this lawsuit, is exactly what Trump did. It's exactly what he started the whole thing when he had the state of Texas, my home state here, to redistrict, right, and draw a new map that impacted minorities primarily. You know, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, as they say where I'm from. And so when I saw this, I wasn't surprised, but it's a little bit laughable. Hey, family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zone calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful
together.
All right. So let's get into it. I want to read through the introduction of their lawsuit here. All right. So here's what it says. Race cannot be used as a proxy to advance political interests, but that is precisely what the California General Assembly did with Proposition 50, the recent ballot initiative that junked California's pre-existing electoral map in favor of a rush job rejiggering of California's congressional district lines. That's exactly what Trump did with Texas. Of course, they argue that what they did was not racial gerrymandering, that it was political or partisan gerrymandering, but the impact has been very much racial. So that's exactly what they did here. But they don't want Gavin Newsom in the state of California. And I think upwards of 60% of California showed up and voted in favor of Proposition 50. So they don't want the state of California doing precisely what happened here in the state of Texas. Anyway, it reads, in the press, California's legislators and governor sold a plan to promote the interests of Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections, but amongst themselves and on the debate floor, the focus was not partisan, but race. Again, racial gerrymandering pursuant to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is prohibited. All right? It is prohibited. On the other hand, partisan or political gerrymandering, the court has said, is permissible. What's the difference? Well, the difference is if you're focusing on some racial issue when you do your redistricting, then that's racial gerrymandering. Or, on the other hand, if you're focused on trying to benefit your political party and not race, then that's permissible, and that's not considered racial gerrymandering. That's the way the court has sort of defined litigation in this area. But quite often, the impact of the redistricting is racial. And that's what happened in Texas. All right. Quite often, the disparate impact of so-called political gerrymandering is racial. And that's what they're alleging here in this lawsuit, basically. The first thing that map drawer Paul Mitchell did in drawing the new map, the number one thing that he first started thinking about was to create a new majority-minority Latino district. And legislators focused not on the purported vote dilution of Democrats elsewhere across the country, but on the supposed dilution of the voting power of racial groups in other states. They feared that a Latino voice in Texas is worth 1/3 of the representation as a white voice, that Texas would slide back to the days of black codes and Jim Crow, and that Texas legislators would silence the voices of Latino voters. Proposition 50 would serve as a shield against racist maps, they told each other, so that minorities in California could stand up and be counted. The end result is a map that manipulates district lines in the name of bolstering the voting power of Hispanic Californians because of their race. Again, I fail to see the difference. Even assuming that Proposition 50 is really race-based, I fail to see the difference in what is going on here in Texas when the result is minority representatives in the House have been impacted, will be impacted by Texas' new voting map. So what is the difference? We should do away with all the shenanigans and the pretense, right? And basically, admit that that's what Texas is all about. It is to benefit white conservatives so that Trump can continue to have a majority in the House, which again, that majority will be overwhelmingly white. So let's stop the pretense here in this lawsuit. Our Constitution does not tolerate this racial gerrymandering. That's right. But Trump is doing it too, if their allegations against the state of California are true. I'm not admitting that they are. But if they are, that's what both are doing. At the heart of the Constitution's guarantee of equal protection lies the simple command that the government must treat citizens as individuals, not as simply components of a racial class. Although the Supreme Court has allowed race-conscious redistricting to rectify prior violations of the Voting Rights Act, the Department of Justice has approved California's pre-existing election system as recently as President Barack Obama's term. Now, I got to connect this with the fight that is occurring right now in the Supreme Court about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. All right? Clarence Thomas is leading the way to get rid of, to gut, to eliminate, to weaken Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is what is used to fight against racial gerrymandering. He wants to get rid of it so that conservatives across the country can do racial gerrymandering whenever they want to, basically. All right? So this is very, very important because it concerns an extremely important part of the Voting Rights Act. All right? They've already gutted the most important part of the Voting Rights Act in the Shelby County case, and now they're trying to likewise gut the remaining provisions of the Voting Rights Act that protect us as African Americans. And while they're trying to do that, here they file a lawsuit based on the pretension that Trump is not trying to conduct racial gerrymandering here in the state of Texas. Again, it's a lot of pretension in my mind. All right, let's go back. The United States brings this complaint and intervention pursuant to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and alleges. And here's what really, 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 really bugs me. They're using the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Both were put in place to protect the voting power, voting opportunities of African American people. Yet they're using them to advance Trump's pretty much white supremacist agenda. What white supremacist agenda? Project 2025. And the GOP has become blatantly supportive of white supremacy. Yet they're using laws put in place to protect our rights to accomplish their racist goals. That's just foul. That's unjust. And on a personal note, we as African Americans, we should be incensed about this. Laws that were put in place to protect us from voter disenfranchisement are being used to now dilute our voting power. Like I said, they already got rid of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act in the Shelby County case. Now they're using what's remaining to yet advance what I would describe as a white supremacist agenda. Anyway, so here are their allegations. One, The Constitution entrusts states with the job of designing congressional districts, but it also imposes an important constraint. A state may not use race as the predominant factor in drawing district lines unless it has a compelling reason to do so. That is what we call strict scrutiny. All right, if a state uses race, then the state must pass what we in the law call strict scrutiny, which means the state must show that they have a compelling state interest for using race, and they must show that they have narrowly tailored whatever means they're using to try to achieve that compelling state interest. Again, it's strict scrutiny because pursuant to the Equal Protection Clause, states should not generally use race, but if they do, they got to justify it. They got to show we have a very compelling, not just an important reason, but a very compelling reason, and we have come up with means to further that compelling reason, and those means are very, very narrowly tailored. In other words, it fits just the means fit just this compelling interest that we're trying to promote. All right, number 2, race is a predominant factor when traditional districting factors such as compactness, race for political subdivisions, partisan advantage, etc., are subordinated to racial considerations. Although all those partisan gerrymanders lie beyond the reach of federal courts, racial gerrymanders are unconstitutional. That's just a repeat of what I said. Court has said that partisan political gerrymandering is okay if you're trying to help the Republican Party or if you're trying to help your Democratic Party, that's fine, but you can't do redistricting to help a racial group. All right, let's jump down to number 4. To justify the use of race as a predominant factor in drawing district lines, a state must prove that its race-based sorting of voters serves a compelling interest and is narrowly tailored to that end. Again, that's strict scrutiny. All right, the need for such a demanding test is clear. When a state assigns voters on the basis of race, it engages in the offensive and demeaning assumption that voters of a particular race, because of their race, think alike, share the same political interests, and will prefer the same candidates at the polls. Such a pernicious approach to governance that evaluates individuals' thoughts and efforts, their very worth as citizens, according to a criterion barred to the government by history and the Constitution, can only cause continued hurt and injury, contrary as it is to the core purpose of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Folks, to hear this lawsuit say these things in support, again, of an agenda that is anti-Black is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing. And again, we as African Americans, and that's why I do these videos. I want this understood. That's the reason why I do these videos. Because as an African American civil rights attorney, one of the few on YouTube, I bring this stuff to you specifically to enlighten you, to educate you, to empower you as African Americans. A lot of these other attorneys on YouTube, especially our, how can I see it, white counterparts, who may even be progressive, they don't have the African American perspective because they're not Black. They don't see it the way we see it. They haven't been impacted by it the way we have been impacted by it. They don't feel it like we feel it. That's why I do this. And so you listen to a lot of those other attorneys talk about these issues, there's something going to be missing. Right? And that's what it is. This has not impacted them in the same way that it has impacted me and has impacted you. And that's why I'm laser focused on our community and how the law is being used against us. Even laws that were put in place to benefit us. And that is really a core tenet of critical race theory. Critical race theory just simply asks, if we have these laws in place, why are we still experiencing some of the same results? You follow me? So that's what I bring to you. All right, let's go back and finish this. We're almost at the end of reading this introduction. All right, number 6, the Supreme Court has long assumed that one compelling interest is complying with operative provisions of the Voting Rights Act. The VRA, or Voting Rights Act, is an exercise of Congress's power to enforce the 15th Amendment's guarantee that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged. I mean, if you didn't know who brought this lawsuit, it would sound as if this is being argued on behalf of black people. But the thing is, it is going against black people because it is trying to preserve power, okay, for an anti-black regime. MAGA. And it's using laws that were placed on the books for us. It's using those laws against us. You got to understand that fundamental phenomena that we're now dealing with in this country. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which they're trying to get rid of, Clarence Thomas, his conservative colleagues on the court, MAGA, who are using this now against blacks, who are using Section 2 against us, are at the same time trying to get rid of it. I want you to see through their games. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act prohibits states from implementing any practice or procedure that results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. A violation of this prohibition is established if, based on the totality of the circumstances, it is shown that the political processes leading to nomination or election in the state are not equally open to participation by members of a class of citizens protected in that its members have less opportunity than other members of the electorate to participate in the political process and to elect representatives of their choice. Again, folks, this is offensive. This sounds like it is in favor of black people. It is the very opposite. It will disfavor black people because it will enable Trump to continue his anti-black Project 2025 agenda in Congress. And God knows what they may have planned after the 2026 midterm. We've already suffered huge losses. We, African Americans, huge losses from Project 2025. Huge setbacks, not just losses, but setbacks. And they're using laws to protect us to accomplish that setback, that rollback. Number 9, when a state invokes the Voting Rights Act, VRA, to justify race-based districting, it must show, to meet the narrow tailoring requirement, that it had a strong basis in evidence for concluding that the statute required its actions. In other words, the state must establish that it had good reason to think that it would transgress the Voting Rights Act if it did not draw race-based district lines. Well, again, when you think about the fact that this is filed on behalf of the Trump administration, which is advancing Project 2025, which is filled with anti-Black policies, and the response to that is for the state of California, through Proposition 50, to fight fire with fire for and on behalf of African American people who are disparately impacted by Project 2025. Proposition 50 is absolutely righteous and legal and constitutional. Yet they're trying to use laws that favor us, or at least supposed to favor us. I mean, it's just it's amazing when our adversaries try to get rid of laws that benefit us or use them against us. One or the other. And I'll borrow a word they used in their lawsuit. That's very pernicious. Very. To either gut the Civil Rights Act, to either gut the Voting Rights Act, to either gut the Fair Housing Act, or use them against us. And sadly, most in our community don't understand this fight that we're in. If so, not one African American soul would have voted for Trump in 2024. Yet over 2 million did. If only they knew what they were actually voting for. And as you know, I made multiple videos explaining these things, trying to get the word out, which is what I'm still doing right now. Trying to get the word out that these folks are using the Voting Rights Act, the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, 15th Amendment, and anything else they can use. All laws for our benefit, they're using them against us. They have turned them on their head. It's a sad day in America, especially where civil rights and our movement is concerned. All right, so that should give you at least some fire under your belt to tell other African Americans what's going on and why we must be registered to vote, for example. Right? We need to make sure we're registered to vote. We need to turn out in November in huge numbers. You know, I call that impact voting. And that's not just 95% of us voting for a candidate, but that is 95% of eligible Black voters voting. Because 95% of only half who go vote is not good enough. 95% of 50% is about 45%. 45% is not good enough to win elections. We need 95% of 95% voting. Because we see what they're doing. They're trying to take us back. And God knows what is coming after the midterms. There is no telling Well, there is, because it was laid out in Project 2025. And go back and watch my videos, and I'll show you, based on what they said in Project 2025, what is coming after the midterms if they're able to keep control of the House and the Senate. It will not be good for us African Americans, nor will it be good for our democracy. All right. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video, and you better stay woke. You better stay woke. Things are that serious.